White collar crime sentencing. There's a variety of ways to get the shortest possible sentence, and one of those could include 5K1s and cooperation and working alongside the government. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Paperny with White Collar Advice, and today I'm going to speak with and interview my colleague and friend, David Rosenfield, who is a white collar defense attorney with Herrick Feinstein in New York. So, welcome, David, and let's jump right in with your experience and some thoughts on what a 5K1 letter is and how that could help a white collar defendant at their sentencing.
Well, thanks very much.
Of course.
I appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here. A 5K1 motion is a motion by the government to have a defendant's sentence reduced by the judge below the sentencing guidelines range. So today, while the guidelines aren't mandatory, they must be considered by a sentencing judge. And there will be a guidelines range with a minimum and a maximum that are established through a point system. If a defendant provides substantial assistance to the government in cooperation, the government will file what's called a 5K1 motion or letter with the court, asking the court to reduce the defendant's sentence below the minimum guidelines range.
So, okay. So, knowing that getting this 5K1 letter can really help, who is the government most likely to offer cooperation to? I've worked with cases, there's 10, 15 defendants in a case. Sometimes it's the most culpable person they find first and offer a deal. Sometimes it's middle to the end of the line. Does the government care which one it is? Maybe one had more criminal intent than someone else. Do they care, or are they looking for someone to come in and talk first? What's your experience?
Well, what the government usually wants is they'll start with lower level people that are involved in the criminal activity and try and flip them, if you will, to provide evidence against the higher up people in the criminal activity. So the first thing they'll do is try and generally look at lower and mid-level people. The people at the very top of the criminal activity often have no cooperation to give, and because they're at the top of the chain, so the government's not interested in them. As for the others, the first one in is the one that almost always gets the best deal. So there's at times a race to the prosecutor's office at the beginning if there's a series of potential defendants to get in there first and get the best deal.
Okay. To those defendants watching or those who are learning that they might be under investigation, I've been called before and asked if I'm going to judge them if they cooperate or if they choose not to cooperate. And our job isn't, David as a defense attorney and I as a prison consultant, isn't to judge you per se, but rather to present you with the pros and cons of cooperation, how that could impact your end game. And indeed, a number of white-collar defendants have said, I don't want anyone else to get in trouble as a result of something that I did. And others have said, I want to get home to my family and I want to reduce my prison sentence. So our job isn't to judge you, but to educate you. And if I'm your consultant or David's your lawyer, to help you make decisions that are best for you and your family. David, let's talk about the stance that some prosecutors can take. Now, you were a prosecutor. I mentioned this because I have a client who outright told me when he signed a cooperation agreement and his lawyer inquired into someday getting a 5K1, the prosecutor said, we want you to be honest, we want you to be helpful, we don't want you to waste our time, we want you to help us catch other cases, but I guarantee and offer you nothing. And he was a little like, wow, what do I do? Here I might cooperate and go on the stand and wear a wire, yet the prosecutor, until I really prove a value, is essentially offering me nothing. Is that fairly common? And I presume as a prosecutor, it's subjective. A prosecutor in one district might do something measurably different than another. Is that accurate?
Well, it is standard. The prosecutors aren't going to promise you anything right away. And the cooperation agreement itself that the defendant signs specifically indicates that there's no guarantee that there's going to be a 5K letter. Everything turns on the cooperation that's given. But if substantial cooperation, substantial assistance is given, in my experience, there's almost always likely to be a 5K. Now, there's different 5Ks as well. There's a very, very strong 5K and kind of middle of the road 5Ks. But generally, if substantial assistance is provided, the government will provide a 5K letter. Now, in those letters, though, and at sentencing, the government generally will not recommend a specific sentence. The government will simply request that the court depart below the minimum guidelines range.
That leads to actually another question. Some defendants have asked and wondered if, because of their cooperation, a U.S. attorney at the sentencing could say, we recommend 30, 40, 50% departure from the guidelines. In your experience, it's maybe not a percentage, but rather just recommending a departure?
Yes, in my experience, it's recommending a departure below the minimum guidelines range. Now, if the cooperation is extraordinary, the government might recommend a substantial departure, but that's really about the best you're going to get. I have not seen cases, for example, where the government prosecutor will get up there and say, the government recommends probation. It's just not done. It's just a reduction below the minimum guidelines range. That's all they promise.
So, in another video in this series, I'm going to talk about ways that white-collar defendants can help themselves at sentencing. Narratives and character reference letters, and properly demonstrating their remorse, potentially paying back some money, volunteer work. All of those things are part of this process. Is it fair to say, though, that the most effective tool that a defendant has to reduce his sanction is cooperation with the government, all things considered?
By far, that is the best tool that any defendant can utilize to reduce his or her sentence is full cooperation. And that means meetings with government prosecutors, turning over documents, wearing a wire, doing a consensual phone call, all those kinds of things. That's the type of cooperation that the government is looking for, and that is certainly the best way that a defendant is likely to be able to get his or her sentence reduced.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the timeline. My case took 3.5 years from start to finish. And some defendants reach out to me and say, I've agreed to cooperate. How long could this take? And once I learn that there's 8 or 9 other people in their case, some might plead, some are under investigation, some might go to trial, they're amazed at how long it could take from start to finish. So walk us through a potential timeline of someone cooperating, days, week, months, years in your experience as a defense attorney, if someone chooses to cooperate, what that timeline could look like.
Well, the timeline could be as long as years. I mean, just take for an example the FIFA case that's been brought in the Eastern District of New York, the soccer case. Some people have pled well over a year ago, and they're nowhere near being sentenced because the trial of the remaining defendants is not, I think, until November 2017. That's an example of a case where cooperators are going to be waiting years before they learn their sentence. And that's my experience in other cases as well. Particularly complex cases with many defendants, and particularly cases where at least one of the defendants either goes to trial or goes through the motion process prior to trial, then it's going to take a long time. Now, if it's just a case against your client, one person, it can move very quickly, and it can be done in a matter of months from the time that the person pleads guilty until the person is sentenced. It has to be at least 90 days, but it could be in that neighborhood if it's just one person. But when there are multiple defendants, and particularly when not everyone cooperates, then it can take months, and certainly even years.
So David, of course, sticks with the legal advice. Let me offer a little bit of prison advice for those defendants who are considering cooperation or who already are, and it could stretch out for a period of time. I regretted how I used parts of that 3.5-year period. Living in the unknown was difficult, not knowing when I would get sentenced. In fact, I have said before going to prison was actually harder than prison because I didn't have any clarity. So for those of you who might cooperate, knowing that it could take a period of time, it's essential that you are always working on things that besides the cooperation can improve your outcome. Working can help you. Paying back some restitution, volunteer work. Every day you work lawfully can help you. I got a call from a client who said that his probation officer wants to update the probation report because she found out that he's been working. And that really impressed her, that despite his education and background, he's really working at a job that is probably a little bit below his skill set, but he said, I need to work and support my family. So if it goes on for a year or 2 or 3 years, use the time wisely. And I wish I had done a little better job of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Justin. And by keeping active and keeping busy, it will help take your thoughts somewhat away from the fact that you're going to be sentenced and you may go to prison. You need to keep busy, active, be with your family, particularly, as you said, if it can take years before you, from the time you begin to cooperate until you're sentenced, you have to remain active. Get involved in the community,
Yep.
too. Community service is an important thing. So plenty of things to do.
Whatever a defendant can continue to do to show that they're better than their crime or some bad decisions they made, the time can either hurt you or it can help you. I beg all of you that are watching, let it help you. Let's close with a couple of more thoughts here, David. I've get calls from some defendants, as do you, that say, Justin, I've been cooperating, but my sentencing date is a month away, but my cooperation is not fully known. Will I get sentenced? Should my lawyer seek to extend it? Will I get sentenced? Am I not going to get sentenced till they know the full extent of my cooperation? So give us your experience on when someone is actually going to get sentenced if they've been cooperating.
Well, of course, the best scenario is if you can give all of your cooperation before you're sentenced. You want to bring everything, every aspect of your cooperation in front of the judge at the time you're sentenced. That doesn't always happen. And if you provide substantial assistance and fully cooperate after your sentence, within a year, a Rule 35 motion can be filed by the government seeking to reduce your sentence. So it's the mere fact that you're sentenced doesn't mean that you can't still get a reduction in that sentence. But again, in my experience, the best thing to do is to get your cooperation in before sentencing, if at all possible.
For those defendants who might continue to cooperate post-sentencing, if you are in prison, you want to be careful with that prison adjustment. If other inmates learn that you're cooperating and you're going to testify in trial, it could impact your prison adjustment, especially if you're in a low-security prison where they might check your pre-sentence report upon your surrender. It's different in a low versus a camp. So things to consider. David, last question. When my co-conspirator was cooperating, and when he called me on a Saturday morning, I could sense that he was nervous, that he was unprepared, that he was asking questions. I could just tell that it wasn't really him, and that I knew that at that point that he was cooperating. The agents were listening. So who prepares a defendant to cooperate? Is it you? Is it the FBI agents? Is it the two of you together? And I say that because if you are going to cooperate, be ready. Be prepared to go through that process. If not, if you're cooperating against someone who knows all of your intricacies and mannerisms, you could give it away quickly, and that doesn't work. So who actually prepares I don't even recall going back 10 or 11, and I didn't do it. So who prepares that defendant to cooperate, David?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, of course, your attorney
Yep.
will prepare you in general terms how to cooperate. The fact that you've got to completely cooperate in all aspects, fully cooperate, not leave anything out. Now, if the government asks you to wear a wire or do a consensual recording, the FBI agents or other agents that you will be working with will sit down with you and will tell you, coach you, explain to you how to do the recording, how to wear the wire, how to act, what questions to ask, and that sort of thing. And that they're very experienced in this area. So it's up to the agents at that point, really, when you're up to the point of wearing a wire, doing a consensual recording, for them to explain to you how to do it and what to do. I stay out of it at that point. I let the agents take over.
So as I close this video on ways to reduce your white-collar crime sentence, I'll close with a quick story at the FBI where I lectured in March of 11. At the end of a lecture, I had a conversation with an agent who basically told me, Justin, more than 90% of the questions that we ask a lot of the time, we already know the answer to. We want to find out if the defendant's going to be honest and corroborate what we know and take us down roads or not waste our time. So none of the cooperation works. None of these steps that we're suggesting to you work if you're misleading or embellishing or taking the agents down roads that are going to lead nowhere. If you're going to do it, you have to go all in, and that includes telling them the truth if you don't know the answer. Saying something like, I wish I knew the answer to that because it might help me, but the truth is I don't, and I'm not going to waste your time. Dave, would you agree with those final thoughts? Nothing works without the truth.
Yes, you have to be completely truthful with the government. You can't hold back. 90% of the time they know the answer. I don't know if it's quite that high. In many cases, probably a majority of the time, the government agents know the answer, but they don't always know the answer. And so you have to assume that they may not know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And there are cases where you've got evidence, you as a cooperative, evidence that the government doesn't know about.
Right.
So you want to make sure and bring whatever you think is appropriate to their attention, particularly if it looks as though they're missing something.
Sure.
You don't want to hold anything back, and you want to bring new matters to light to them because that obviously will help you as you cooperate.
Perfect. So to close, again, David and I, our goal is to offer you advice. Whatever decision you make, we'll support that decision. We just want to advise and guide you through this process. If you have legal questions, I'm going to put up David's contact information. He's in New York. You should certainly reach out to him. If you're looking for a lawyer that isn't in New York, David has a vast network across the country. Indeed, he has introduced me to lawyers across the country that have helped my clients. So it's not just New York, it's across the country if you're looking for help. And of course, with respect to the prison advice and learning to overcome all of the obstacles that accompany white-collar crime, I'd be happy to help. You should opt into this or subscribe to this channel to learn more. And I'd happily send you a copy of either of my books, Lessons from Prison or Ethics in Motion. Just click the button above. David, this was valuable. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you very much, Justin. I appreciate it and I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.